Okay, now that we've worked through the second virial coefficient in a very rigorous way, and then looking at various common potentials, let's connect to thermodynamics. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take the virial series, truncate it at the second virial coefficient, and we'll use that as our equation of state. So the truncated virial equation of state is going to be P equals RT over Vm. So you can see this is capturing the ideal part of it, and then here is the correction due to given by or carried by the second virial coefficient that traces back to the intermolecular potential. So we can see that the B is that linker between the big thermodynamic system-wide variables and the molecular level interaction. All right. This is part of the course where assuming it's an advanced course, so I'm assuming you're well versed in thermodynamics. If you are, then just try to follow along, confirm that this is all what you think it is. If you're not there, but you're still getting stuff out of this course, then just sort of take some of these things to be true, and then you can play around with the potential energy B's that we've learned about by plugging those in to here. I would suggest starting with the square well potential because it's the simplest one that's still interesting. It has a Boyle temperature, but the formula for it is not too bad. Okay, well, we'll start with Helmholtz free energy. And we're talking on a molar basis here now. So this is just our basic formula for Helmholtz free energy. I won't show how we got there, but that's where we'll start. I just want to note that since we're talking molar, this is also d mu. We're going to actually use that a little bit later, where we're going to use Gibbs free energy. We're not going to. I'm just going to pull Gibbs free energy out of the hat again. I'm thinking that you know where that comes from. Okay. Let's look at this at constant temperature. So this is going to eliminate that term, and we can express this now as dAdV at constant temperature. So this is capturing that equals minus P. So we can take this derivative and plug in the virial equation of state, and then integrate that up. And so when we integrate that up, we're going to get a log term here. We're going to get, and this is the ideal gas term. This is what we get for an ideal gas. Then here, we're going to get the correction, but we also get a constant of integration. It's a constant with respect to volume because we integrated up volume, but it is temperature dependent. Now, let's take the ideal gas. We get this case, and we get that constant if we're making reference to the same reference state. We get that same constant. So what's important is the difference in the Helmholtz free energy from the real gas and the ideal gas. And so we'll write this like this, and that's going to isolate out then just the, oh, I think I have a mistake here. No, yeah, just this term here. Okay, and then let's do entropy. So entropy is just, we can get that by taking this at constant volume. So we get partial A, partial T at constant volume is minus S. So let's take now the derivative of this with respect to T. So that we're going to need the product rule. So first times derivative of the second. So here we are, first times derivative of the second. The minus sign is this minus sign here, plus the second, which is B, times the derivative of the first. And so there is our residual entropy, the entropy due to the entry difference between the ideal rise and the real gas due to the intermolecular potential. So you would just plug in whatever intermolecular potential that gave rise to the B that you're interested in, like the square well, and put that in there and you can calculate entropy. All right, now let's look at internal energy. This is just coming from the definition of Helmholtz free energy. So we're just A plus T, A plus TS. And so we get some cancellation here so the TS is going to multiply a T by this term here, but that's sitting in the A. So these terms will cancel and we'll leave just this. So interesting here, the residual energy, and maybe it makes some sense intuitively, the residual total internal energy is given to us by the rate of change of the virial coefficient with temperature. Or it's proportional to that. It's got a temperature term in here as well, of course. Okay, well, let's quickly pick up the heat capacity. Heat capacity is just take another derivative with respect to temperature, or take a derivative with respect to temperature, and then again we have to use the product rule. So we're going to get a second derivative here, and then we're going to get a derivative of this term times that. So we'll pick up the heat capacity for the real gas, so the residual heat capacity. The ideal gas part of it would, of course, just by the equipetition of energy theorem be 3/2 R. Helmholtz, or enthalpy, then again, just the definition of enthalpy, but we're going to look at it from just the residual pieces. And so just a matter of assembling that together. Then we can take the derivative with respect to T and get our heat capacity. Now, notice these are not the natural units for heat capacity. So generally speaking, what we would want to do is invert this into pressure and replace pressure here if we were using enthalpy. So enthalpy isn't what you would naturally use if you're working with volume as your independent variable. All right, and now let's look at we talked in the first session about the virial coefficient, the virial series in terms of pressure. And so let's look at that truncated series after one term. Now this second virial coefficient, of course, is different than B because we're expanding it with a different variable. However, so how would we handle this in general is we would have two series and we would have to invert the series. That certainly can be done. There's an algorithm for that. Each subsequent coefficient gets gets more and more complicated combinations of the previous coefficients. But lucky for us, if we're working only at the first correction level, only at the second virial level, then it turns out that, and maybe this feels right, that the second virial coefficient should only depend on the second virial coefficient in the V series. The third virial coefficient here should depend on the third and the second. And the fourth would depend on the fourth, third, and second. So we're lucky here that we can invert this series pretty readily. And when we do that, all we're doing here is we're taking this and expressing. So this is our equation of state, and we're then expressing it with this series. And now we can see that the leading term here is B bar, this B, RT. Okay, that must be then B, because this is we're expanding out Z. So we've taken our equation of state, turned it into Z by dividing by V, RT over V, and we've gotten this, right? We get a higher order term, B times B prime, but that's going to be connected to C. So we only want to connect to B, and in doing that, then we find a rather simple relationship between the pressure second virial coefficient and the volume second virial coefficient. Okay, Well, to understand the difference between an ideal gas and a real gas, we need to look at fugacity. And so if we look at the chemical potential for a real gas, it's expressed as referenced to some reference state, anything we choose, and then RT ln fugacity. Now, the ideal, oh, I got a mistake here. The ideal gas, likewise, reference to that same reference state, RT ln P. So the pressure is the, for an ideal gas, that gives us the chemical potential. So we are looking at P versus F. Now, what we often do is define something called the fugacity coefficient, which is a relationship which captures the relationship between the fugacity and the pressure here. So we define the fugacity coefficient this way. And now let's take and look at the difference between the real gas and the ideal gas. So we're going to take this difference, we'll plug in this side, and then we'll plug in this, and we can see here that we get cancellation of the reference state. So this takes us away from the reference state to just any state we're at, and we're directly comparing the real gas to the ideal gas. When we do that, we can use property of logs to combine this. And then if we use our expression for the relationship between fugacity and pressure, this becomes RT ln times ln of the fugacity coefficient. Okay, so there's that. Where does B come in? Well, let's use the Gibbs free energy, and we're going to use the Gibbs free energy because it's most convenient here. So here is our expression for the molar Gibbs free energy, and the molar Gibbs free energy, of course, is the chemical potential as well. So let's look at the derivative of this. So if I do du dp at constant T, I'm going to get Vm. And likewise, if I were to do this for an ideal gas, I would get Vm ideal. And so since there's a subtraction here, we get Vm minus Vm ideal. So this is the difference in the molar volume between the real gas and the ideal gas. Now, let's use this formula here. So our formula involving the fugacity coefficient, and we get if we take this divided by derivative with respect to P, nothing here, but then we'll get the derivative of log of gamma with respect to P. All right, well, so we can set these two equal, and so we get the derivative of log gamma equals Vm minus Vm ideal. Okay, well, let's plug in now the Virial coefficient, the Virial series in P. So if we were to take this, I should have written that down here. So Vm is RT over P. Okay. So this is so I'm going to bring across the RT, divide by the Vm. And then the P is going to cancel here. So I'm going to have no P in that second term. All right, so that's what's getting stuck in here. And then the ideal gas is just RT minus P. So that cancels this bit here and leaves only that. So now we can integrate up the log of the fugacity coefficient. So we'll integrate this up to whatever pressure we're at, the system pressure. And so when we do that, we get BRTP, mistake here, got a mistake here, for our fugacity coefficient. Okay. So now you could plug in the various intermolecular potentials that we've worked up. But in general, we have a B that behaves where we have an attractive dominance at lower temperatures, a repulsion domination at the higher temperatures, and then we have the Boyle temperature demarking that change. Well, at the Boyle temperature, we said the gas behaves ideal-like even if it's outside of ideal conditions. So that must imply that at the Boyle temperature, our gamma must equal 1 because our real gas is behaving just like an ideal gas. Now, when attraction dominates, then gamma is going to be less than 1. And so for temperatures below the Boyle temperature, we're less than 1. And for temperatures above the Boyle temperature, we're more than 1. All right, so that's the connection here to the macroscopic thermodynamic properties. And the second virial coefficient plays a key role in making that connection between the macroscopic and the microscopic.